Anyone remember the Zune, Sony's Betamax, or even Evian's water bra? And yes, that one is real. We've created a lot of really cool inventions, but there have been twice as many failures as successful products, and I've got the list of the weirdest and biggest failures. And it gets weird very fast. Evian's water bra is one of those products that makes you double check the calendar to see if it's April Fool's Day. Released in 2005, it was designed to keep wearers hydrated and cool by carrying 2 whole litres of water on their chest. Aside from the obvious impracticality and discomfort, it didn't align with Evian's brand as a premium bottled water company. It lacked any real market research or consumer testing. Like seriously, why did anyone think this would work? Why would a brand go in such a weird direction? But it wasn't nearly as weird as when Colgate released the Colgate Lasagne. It is perhaps the most bewildering example of brand extension gone wrong. In the 1980s, Colgate, known worldwide for toothpaste, tried to break into the frozen food market with a line of ready-made meals. I assume the idea in the boardroom was customers trust us to put things in their mouths. Why not food? However, Colgate didn't factor that consumers couldn't disassociate the Colgate name from minty toothpaste. The mental image of brushing your teeth and then digging into a Colgate branded beef lasagne was just too strange. Unsurprisingly, the product flopped almost instantly, although I hear the minty version of the lasagna is doing really well. The Microsoft Zune, the MP3 player that thought it could compete against Apple's iPod. The Zune was sleek, functional, and even had some unique features like song sharing. But by the time it arrived, Apple had already built an empire around iTunes and the iPod. The Zune had just 2% of the market compared to Apple's 73%, and even with the loyal fans, it couldn't escape being the butt of tech jokes. Even after over a decade, films like Guardians of the Galaxy are still making fun of Zune. Microsoft officially discontinued it in 2015, but who knows, maybe we'll get a Zune Plus soon. The Reliant Robin is infamous in the UK as the three-wheeled car that seemed engineered to fall over at the first sharp turn. Introduced as an affordable, lightweight vehicle, it was technically classed as a motorcycle, which meant cheaper road taxes and licensing. Unfortunately, with its narrow front wheel track and high centre of gravity, it could tip over even during mild manoeuvres. While it found a place in pop culture, from Mr. Bean sight gags to Top Gear pranks, actual drivers had to contend with the constant mechanical issues and a reputation for instability. The UK even named it one of the worst cars in the history of car making, and I got to ask, would you drive this? Could you drive this? Lululemon Astro pants were yoga pants that turned heads, for all the wrong reasons. Customers quickly discovered they were so sheer that they became unintentionally revealing, especially in bright light. Lululemon admitted the fabric was defective, but instead of issuing refunds or pulling the stock off the shelves, they continued to sell what they had at full price at $92 a pair. The incident sparked outrage, but Lululemon couldn't be bothered, and somehow they're bigger than ever. I guess maintaining your quality brand reputation is more important than a refund. Don't you love capitalism? The Xybernaut Poma was a wearable computer from the early 2000s. Let me emphasise that. A wearable computer. It looked like a knockoff Star Trek wannabe, and yet, I kinda dig it. It offered portable computing power and even finger sensors to control the interface, but the lack of widespread Wi-Fi and its bulky, uncomfortable design made it impractical. Wearing one in public guaranteed stares, and unfortunately, the world wasn't ready for this level of style. While the concept foreshadowed modern wearables, it turns out wearing lots of heavy computer peripherals isn't what people want to do. The face trainer claimed to help tone your facial muscles, which in turn would provide a more youthful look through targeted exercise. The catch? You had to wear this, a strange, mask-like contraption over your head, making you look like the next boss in a Dark Souls game. Weirdly enough though, we aren't done with this type of headgear. We have a LED face mask that's been popping up on my feed, and it's just as terrifying. Just look at it here. Nintendo's Virtual Boy. It was 1995, And Nintendo, fresh off the success of the Super Nintendo, decided to dive into virtual reality before VR was remotely ready for consumers. The Virtual Boy looked like a strange hybrid between binoculars and something I might get arrested for having, and the worst part, the graphics were all in a headache-inducing shade of red. The immersion Nintendo promised never materialised. Instead, players reported eye strain, neck pain, and nausea. To make matters worse, rumours began spreading that it could cause permanent eye damage. The system was expensive, had a poor game library, and flopped within months. With how good VR is looking now, it's surprising that they haven't dipped their toes back in the game. Theranos wasn't just a failed product, it was full-blown fraud. The company promised revolutionary blood tests that could detect diseases from a single drop of blood. Investors poured billions into the idea, but behind the scenes the technology didn't work. Tests were unreliable, results were manipulated, and eventually the truth came out. The story was so popular, they made a TV series about it, and they did not paint the company well. But the TV series is pretty good. The Apple Newton was Apple's next step to revolutionise the computer. It was a handheld personal digital assistant with handwriting recognition. It had a large screen and kind of looked a lot like the iPad, but unfortunately for Apple, the technology wasn't there yet. The handwriting recognition was unreliable, the device was bulky, and it was far too expensive for most people. While it failed in the 90s, Apple firmly believed that the Newton could eventually take off, which it did in the form of the iPad. Grandmas everywhere rejoiced that they could now play Candy Crush on a much bigger screen. New Coke was such an immediate failure that it makes you wonder if they actually did it on purpose. In 1985, Coca-Cola decided to reformulate its classic drink to taste sweeter, hoping to win over Pepsi drinkers in blind taste tests. While the new formula did well in research settings, the public backlash was swift and merciless once it hit the shelves. Loyal Coke drinkers saw it as a betrayal, hoarded old cans, and launched protest campaigns. Within just 77 days, Coca-Cola backtracked, reintroducing the original recipe as Coca-Cola Classic. Ironically, the fiasco ended up strengthening brand loyalty. I mean, if this was the strategy, it's a hell of a gamble, but it really paid off. Nostalgia and comfort does wonders for business. Do you remember the VHS? Well, when the VHS was first coming out, it had major competition in the form of Sony's Betamax. And why you might not have heard of the Betamax is a lesson in how superior technology can still lose to inferior competition. Betamax had better picture quality than VHS, but shorter recording times, higher costs, and crucially, no deals with movie rental stores. VHS was everywhere, and if you wanted to rent any movie, you had to have VHS. Betamax just couldn't compete with VHS quickly becoming the standard, and eventually, Betamax was left behind entirely. R.J. Reynolds, Smokeless cigarettes. You heard that right, smokeless cigarettes, much like non-alcoholic beer, is a weird oxymoron of a phrase. R.J. Reynolds thought long and hard about how smoking was going out of fashion, and saw that one of the major complaints was the smoke itself. So, let's just remove the smoke. By heating the tobacco instead of burning it, it supposedly offered a cleaner smoking experience. The company spent $325 million developing them, but smokers hated the charcoal-like taste and lack of satisfaction. The product was pulled from shelves in the early 1990s, but who knows, maybe vaping will go smokeless too. Metal on metal hip implants were marketed as a groundbreaking, longer-lasting solution to traditional hip replacements, promising to give patients decades of smooth mobility. Instead, they ended up causing some of the worst medical product scandals in recent history. Over time, the constant friction between the metal ball and socket released microscopic metal particles into surrounding tissue and even into the bloodstream. This could trigger inflammation, destroy soft tissue, and cause osteolysis, a process where bone starts to deteriorate. Many patients found themselves in excruciating pain, needing revision surgeries far sooner than they ever expected. Class action lawsuits followed, and companies faced billions in settlements, making this one of the most cautionary tales in medical device history. Google Glass promised to bring augmented reality to everyday life, letting users take photos, check messages, and navigate hands-free through a sleek-looking wearable. But in practice, it came with a $1,500 price tag, a design that made wearers look awkward, and widespread privacy concerns. Glass holes became a term for users perceived as creepy or invasive. And what a term that is, some clever haters out there. Tech enthusiasts were intrigued, but mainstream consumers stayed away. Google quietly pulled the consumer version, but we've seen something similar with the Snapchat glasses. Maybe the Google Glass can make a comeback, but it really needs a redesign. The Blackberry Storm is what happens when an old market leader panics. Facing the rise of the iPhone, BlackBerry rushed out its first touchscreen phone. Unfortunately, the clickable screen was unresponsive, the software buggy, and the hardware unreliable. Verizon sold 1 million units in 2 months, but had to replace most of them, losing $500 million in the process. How many of you have an Apple Watch or a Fitbit? Well, what if you had a worse version of those, but it was more expensive? Meet the Jawbone UP3. It entered the fitness tracker market with high hopes, boasting sleek design and advanced sensors. However, it was overpriced, tracked fewer metrics than rivals like Fitbit, and had a clasp prone to falling off during normal wear. At over $160, consumers expected far more. Wait, just $160? Compared to where Fitbit and the Apple Watch are now, that seems like a much better deal, except the whole braking thing. Finally, Bic For Her pens, a baffling attempt to gender an everyday writing instrument. Marketed in pastel colours and described as designed for a woman's hand, they sparked widespread mockery. Online reviews, especially on Amazon, turned the pens into a comedy sensation, with users sarcastically claiming they transformed their lives, improved their handwriting, and even enhanced romantic prospects. Here's a section of one of my favourite reviews. Since I've begun using these pens, men have found me more attractive and approachable. It has given me soft skin and manageable hair, and it has really given me the self-esteem I needed to start a book club and flirt with the bag boy at my local market. Love the sarcasm here. These failures prove that no matter how big or successful a company is, innovation is always a gamble. And if you'd like to see more failed inventions and tech topics, check out my channel, and don't forget to subscribe.